A life that has the stories to back it. A life to be proud of. It's a Winchester life.
Yeah, baby. 6'8" Western. Oh, mule deer, baby, right there.
Tune in every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern on Waypoint TV.
Just be sitting up there jacked with Pepsi.
I'm there for the pack out. You just got to pack me in.
Committed to the bow early on. Like, I love getting close and putting up.
You cover a range of stuff on here too, right? Like,
we call this the THP World Headquarters.
You know, my grandpa Roy Weatherby.
I came into like that golden little pocket where there was like 4 or 5 different bulls. Just
You're Canadian? We're doing a Canadian podcast.
My name's Douglas Bode.
I'm Robbie Denning.
Roy Candy.
Mine's hopping on at all. I just kind of had a crazy last couple days trying to get everything done with that deer.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, congrats. You've already started off to a hell of a season. You got a bull down already, I see, and now you got a nice deer. So congrats on that.
Thanks.
Yeah, and just like an all around great year. I follow you quite a bit, and my son actually, he's a huge fan of yours. When I told him I'm getting you on the show, he was pretty pumped. He wanted to miss school and see if he could hop on too, but I said no. You gotta go learn, buddy. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, but I follow you on Instagram, and I always see you holding up those big cardboard checks, and you got the NFAA Shooter of the Year. So congrats on that.
Thanks, appreciate that.
So how long have you been shooting for?
Forever, it seems like. I was shooting little suction cup bows when I was a teeny little kid, and then I started trying to think. I know I got like my first compound bow in kindergarten, and then I started shooting tournaments when I was probably in, I don't know, I would have had to been probably 13, 11, 12, 13, something like that. I started shooting tournaments and just kind of took off from there. So basically been shooting my whole life.
Yeah, no doubt. Was your dad a shooter, or your grandpa, or anything like that?
So my dad had bow hunted some. He wasn't like super into the bow hunting deal, but he had kind of started doing that and stuff. And then he's the one that kind of got me started into it. He never did any like the tournaments or the competition side of anything.
Right. Oh, that's cool, man. So when did you know that you wanted to be a professional shooter? Was it something that you just felt like you always wanted to do, or did it kind of just grow on you?
It was kind of always a dream, growing up and stuff. Be like, oh, it'd be so cool to be able to shoot bows. And then just kind of kept working at it, and it eventually just all worked out. So it's been kind of neat to, have my actual dream job come to real life. So
yeah, no doubt. How about bow hunting? When did you get into that? Because I know, like, one of the things I don't think a lot of people know is, like, you're obviously a very well-established professional shooter, but you're also a killer when it comes to taking down animals.
Yeah, I've been bow hunting. Well, here in Utah, we can start when we're 12. So since I was 12, I've been bow hunting. So, and it took a while for me to really, I don't know, bow hunting takes a while to kind of learn and figure out what you're doing and stuff. So it took me a while. I shot a deer first or second year I was hunting, and I shot a few, here and there. But it took a while to really get it dialed in to where I was starting to be a little more consistent.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things about being like, shooting is such a huge part of being a bow hunter, but there's so many more aspects that go into that as well that you have to, it takes years and decades to, really hone your craft as a skilled, as a hunter, an outdoorsman, as a bow hunter. But when you are a professional shooter and a very well accomplished shooter like yourself, it's definitely it definitely adds value to your craft for sure, and to your accomplishments of being an effective bow hunter.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes hand in hand. Bow hunting is its whole own set of challenges, but being able to make really difficult shots has made all the difference in the world for me. Like I can't remember how many different animals I think back, and it's like I probably would not have killed that if I wasn't able to shoot the way that I can shoot. If I was limited to 40, 50 yards or something like that, it would just, everything is so much tougher. Where I feel like that's kind of one thing that I've been able to capitalize on a little bit, is if an animal presents me with a tough shot, I feel like I'm able to make that shot a lot easier and more consistently than if I didn't practice and shoot as much as I did.
Yeah, for sure. And I know for myself, even like I'm more comfortable taking those shots that are, 50, 60 yards. And I know obviously that is all, every hunter is different. You have to be good at accepting the fact and like understanding what your limitations are and what limitations you put on yourself. Obviously, somebody who's skilled as you, making a 70, 80 yard shot, it's going to be a lot easier for somebody who doesn't shoot as much. So, but that being said, I really do feel like, for myself, I find, most of my animals are, in that 50 to 70 range. And like, it just gives you more time when you're hunting. Like, I don't, I find like a lot of the time those close up shots, the deer, they're a lot more jumpy. You got to be extra quiet. You just don't have the forgiveness you do at, 50, 60, 70 yards. But again, it all comes down to, how much time you're putting into shooting your bow, how confident you are, and all that as well. Because obviously, we're out there to kill animals, but at the end of the day, we don't want to be wounding anything or anything like that.
Yeah, it totally makes a big difference. I mean, you can increase your effective range, and even just like the close shots is that much better. I mean, I killed my bull this year at maybe 25 yards or so, close enough I didn't really even need to range him or nothing. And once I got drawn back on him, the only thought going through my head was basically like, if you turn broadside, you're good as dead. Like, I had so much confidence in that shot. I didn't even bat an eye on whether I was going to make the shot or not. It's just if he gave me a shot, he was pretty well toast, and he gave me a broadside shot and ran like 30 yards and tipped over dead. So it worked out pretty good.
Yeah, it's nice when those happens. I know that bull I killed last year, one of the ones, I shot him. He came in 12 yards. He didn't even know where I was, and he just walked past a tree, and then he just seen me draw back, and then he stopped enough for me to put one in him, and it was at, nice and close. So it's definitely nice when you
Dude,
do
that's
get those,
awesome.
but they don't always happen that way. And when you're out there, you kind of just got to you got to feel the situation out, and every situation's different. So, but definitely having confidence in your ability to shoot, and being as accomplished shooter as you, it definitely helps. So, I want to talk a bit about your target stuff, because I got a million questions from my son and just for myself. But I know you switched bows this year, so I want to kind of talk about like your process of like what you go through to set up a new bow. I imagine the transition from PSC to Matthews must have been taken a little bit of adjustment, or is it something that you've just shot so many different types of bows you could just kind of dive into right away?
I mean, yes and no. To me, I mean, a bow's a bow to a certain extent. Like, I know what specs I need out of a bow to make it shoot good, as far as like draw length and holding weight, and some different stuff like that. So I always kind of like have a baseline that I start with, and then it's just fine tuning from there. But there's definitely a learning curve with new bows. To be able to win at the top level, you can't just be shooting a bow good. You have to be shooting a bow like out of this world amazing to be able to win tournaments. So just that last little teeny tiny bit you got to get out of them is the hard part. And it took me a while this year. I was shooting good scores. I was actually shooting really well at the start of the year even. To a certain extent, a bow's a bow, and I kind of know what I need out of a bow as far as like different draw length and peep height and loop length and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of have like a baseline set of specs that I start out with every bow, and then it's just fine tuning and tweaking from there, which is really the nitty gritty stuff that makes the biggest difference in the end. I can get one really close right off the bat, but it's just really, really fine tuning to be able to win tournaments at the levels that I'm trying to compete at. It's so hard to shoot the kind of scores you got to shoot to win those tournaments. Everything has to be perfect. You just cannot have anything go wrong. So it took a little while switching, just to get everything where I really felt like I had that bow hammered out. Even if it's like the same company sometimes, just from one model to the next, I kind of go through that every now and then if it's a little bit different. And just relearning different stuff, different cam systems or things like that to really optimize them and get the most out of them for you. So it's definitely a learning curve, but I felt like I hit the ground running pretty good this year. Even switching companies and stuff, I was shooting good scores in that right off the bat. It was just really getting things dialed, and fine tuning from there, and just kind of learning what the bow wants, and how you need to shoot the bow, or what you need to do to optimize the bow for your setup under pressure, and learning what happens when you get nervous with the bow. And that's a hard thing for me too, is you can set up a bow to shoot good at home, but under pressure is so much different. You just don't know what to expect until you get under pressure. And then you've got to like take what you learned, go home, revamp for the next tournament, and then there's no way to test it again until you're at a tournament again. So it's just a little bit of trial and error there, kind of really dialing things in.
Yeah, I guess when when you're in that big of a field, and I imagine like the competition, how do you like is it one of those things that has progressed, it just slowly gets better and better every year, or do you feel like it's always just stay constant where like new shooters come up and then we all get older, unfortunately, so we're just not able to compete at the levels that we want to?
Yeah, no, it seems like the level of competition just gets higher and higher every year. I mean, you take the same guys and everybody just keeps getting better and better, and then you get new guys coming in. But yeah, you look at the scores from even the last 4 or 5 years. In some tournaments, it's kind of the same as it was. Like indoors, it's kind of going to be the same scores as it is. But like 3D and stuff like that, I mean, it's crazy how many 60 up scores are being put up now, where that was like the record wasn't even 60 up, say maybe 3-4 years ago.
Wow.
So it's crazy. The level of the competition right now is just insane.
Yeah, and I guess with bow technology has come so far. I mean, like you look like back 5 years ago and like to where it is now, and it just seems like every year it just comes like leaps and bounds, and like we just learned so much with arrows and all this stuff, and like every year manufacturers are coming out with like new and innovative stuff, and so that's got to help. It definitely helps in your shooting ability, but like you said, I all these and we've had Greg Poole on the show quite a bit, and I talked to Greg quite a bit, and I kind of tease him about how much work he puts into a bow, but when it can make the difference of winning a tournament to not. I mean, like shooting, I'm a bow hunter, I shoot it, I have not, I don't want to say that you have a lot of forgiveness, because I mean you don't want to make a bad shot, but still, you know what I mean, right? Like you're not hitting tens or X's or anything like that, so you do have a little bit more forgiveness, but in such a competitive field, you definitely must have to hone and like really dial in your bow just to get that edge on your competition. Whereas like, the new guys coming up, they might not pay attention to all as much details as you are. Because you've been through it before. You know what's worked in the past and where you've failed, and the things you have to do to be successful now, I imagine.
Yeah, you just learn over the years kind of what works for you and what doesn't. And it's harder when you're first coming up and you don't know what to expect and stuff. So yeah, just to get a bow shooting like 95% of the way good, it's not that hard. But the last little teeny tiny bit is the hard part that takes a long time, because you look at a tournament and one bad arrow is going to make it or break it for you. So you just cannot have any room for errors. And the bow just has to be so forgiving and dialed in so well to be able to win tournaments. It's just insane what they've got to do. And I kind of take the same mentality and move it to my hunting bow as well. And I didn't used to worry as much about my hunting bow, because it's like, killing an animal, I got, a pretty good sized kill zone. I'm not trying to hit a 1-inch 12 ring or whatever at 50 yards. I can hit within 4 inches of 50 and be plenty good. But I've kind of taken the mindset of my target bows to my hunting bows now, and I absolutely will not take a bow hunting that's not dialed in out to at least 120. Not meaning that I'm going to shoot one that far, but if I know I'm shooting softball size groups at 120 yards and I get a bull at 50 yards, I know I can make that shot, and it's not even a question in my mind. And so now I've taken that mentality to my hunting bows, rather than like good enough, the thing has to be perfect. And I think that helps a ton. Just, having confidence in your setup and knowing that when that shot presents itself, you can make it count.
Yeah, for sure. And like we were saying earlier, like confidence is everything. Confidence in your equipment, confidence in your abilities, and like knowing your limitations. I mean, a softball size grouping at 120 yards. I mean, not too many bow hunters are doing that, right? But it's still like you have to be confident. So if you're throwing that size groupings at your max is 50 yards, then maybe you want to dial it down to 30 or 40, right? You gotta live within your means, and you gotta hunt within your means. So yeah, you definitely want to be cognizant of that. So does your setup change for like indoor compared to 3D and then outdoor, or do you just run the same setup for all, for different types of archery? Obviously not bow hunting.
Yeah, so some parts of the setup will change and some will stay the same. I tend to be a shooter that basically, as far as bow setup, so the big things to me on a target bow are going to be draw length, loop length, holding weight, peep height, are like the most important things on a target bow. For me personally, that pretty much all stays the same all year, whether it's indoor, outdoor, 3D, whatever I'm shooting. Some guys will actually change a little bit, indoors, outdoors, or 3D, just because of the way they aim and stuff. That will all stay the same for me. Stabilizers stay the same. The only thing that really changes for me is like sight picture and arrows. So I may run skinny arrows or fat arrows, and I may run like a dot for indoor target stuff. I'll run a pin for 3D. So I'll change that kind of stuff. But as far as like the actual bow setup goes, mine pretty much stays the same.
Right. So what about like I know you shoot a controlled release, right? Have you ever shot a hinge, or is that something you go back and forth?
Yeah. No, I shot a hinge for a long time. So growing up, I always shot just a regular wrist strap, and then started getting into the target stuff and learned to shoot with back tension. I was shooting a hinge for a long time. I shot a hinge for everything forever, and then I started shooting a hinge for indoors, and then a really heavy button for outdoors. Until I switched. I switched in 2020, and then there's no going back for me now. That is, I am a command shooter. That's the way I'm gonna shoot. It just is what it is. I mean, who knows? I guess maybe down the road that could change, but for me, it's just a more accurate way for me to shoot a bow. I just feel like I have way more control over my shot, and things just work out better for me with that.
Yeah, for sure. Like I shoot I shoot a controlled release as well. And I do go back and forth, at the beginning of the season, like January, I'll go to a hinge just to kind of like when I'm resetting my shot process, when I'm going through all my steps and stuff. And I do suffer a bit with like most people, I'm not sure if you do, but like every once in a while you get those demons coming in, you get a little bit of target panic and you really have to fight through that, or you're getting drive-bys and you're like, you really have to force yourself. And that's where I find, like a thumb button, it's just so crucial because like you can just, instead of just sitting there holding that pin while it's floating and just hoping that release is going to break when it does, you can actually like, I'll literally just sit there for as long as it takes and just make sure I have control of that pin and where I want to put it. And then just, without punching it too hard, you just finish through and pull through the shot.
Mm-hmm.
What's it like for you?
That's what it takes.
Yeah, for sure. That's what I was going to ask you is like, do you still suffer with any of those demons? Do they come back to haunt you every once in a while?
You're always going to have demons. It's just which ones do you want to deal with more than the others? The way I look at it, if I'm shooting a hinge, I got dip bangs and stuff like that to worry about, or not holding good, or whatever it may be. Where if I'm shooting a button, you're going to have some anticipation every now and then creep up on you. So it's just, what battle do you want to fight? And me personally, I will take the command shooting option because I feel like I have control over the shot when I do that. As long as I do my job, I handle my mental game well, I have control over the shot. Where with a hinge, you could be making the best shot of your life, and all of a sudden you have one little dip, and boom, it fires, and it's over with. Yeah. So I feel like I kind of control my own destiny more that way. And yeah, you will have a little bit of anticipation. There's no way around it, but you just don't let that overcome you and overtake your shot. So as soon as you start feeling a little bit of that, you just nip it in the butt and get rid of it, and force yourself to do what you've got to do, whether it's, if you're struggling with drive-bys, you're not holding steady or whatever, maybe you hold longer than you should have purposely while you're practicing, just to force yourself, like it's going to sit in the middle and I'm not going to shoot it until it's ready type of deal. And it really all just boils down to mental game at that point. You've got to have a solid mental game to be able to shoot that way. And you got to kind of keep things in check and not, a lot of guys will start to get the target panic bug a little bit. And instead of just getting rid of that and like basically not even letting it be an option in their mind, it just overcomes them, and that's all they can think about. And if you're worried you're going to get target panic, you're going to get it. That's going to happen. So to me, it's just not even an option. I don't consider target panic. And if I start to get a little bit of anticipation going on, I get rid of that and get it gone, and kind of that's that.
Yeah, I find that working with my son, I mean, he's 12 and like really working through these, and it's like he gets target panic, and I'm like, you understand this is all like, this is in your head, it's all mental, right? Like you really have to just like this is where you have to build that mental strength, and like you just have to work through it. You're doing it. Like we take videos of him, I show him exactly what he's doing. I'm like, did you see what's happening here? And like nobody can control this but you. So you have to just you have to just find a way. I mean, it's different for everyone. You just have to find a way to fight through it, and like just you know what you have to do, and just like trust the process that we're working on, and just trust the idea that if you're aware of it and you know it's going to happen, and just like mentally really hard. It's hard at the beginning. I know I struggled with it. I went through when I first got it the very first time. I was like, what is this? Like, man, I was. Some people they stop shooting because of it, right? They get it so bad, and it's just something you just have to really work on and really fight through. But like you said, it's it always wants to creep back. It always, and I find this time of the year is the hardest because you're not shooting, like for me, I get home from work and then I'll shoot my bow, and it's now, it's not how many arrows I get. It's like the quality of arrows I get rather than shooting 100. It's to me, and now it's like, I'm more effective of shooting 25 really good arrows than shooting just 100 arrows just to get, that muscle memory in there. But, yeah, it's definitely one of those things that they always seem to haunt you. What's your process for training and that? Like, are you like throughout the season? I imagine like you're going through all these tournaments through the winter and summer. Like you can't afford to take any time off from shooting.
Yeah, not really. The only time I really get off of shooting is during hunting season, which I can't really take off. I mean, I'll shoot my hunting bow as much as I can throughout the season, which it's not as much practicing as just like checking my equipment throughout the season and making sure things are good, because I could set a bow down for a month and pick it back up later, and I can shoot with a hunting bow almost as good as I did the day I set it down, just because I have so much muscle memory built up and I shoot nonstop all year long. It's not that hard, but I got to make sure things are dialed and make sure I just kind of keep myself tuned up just enough that I keep that edge. Where like with the target bow, I shoot them so hard all year long, and you can't afford time off. When you're trying to win tournaments, you cannot take it. Like I'll take maybe a few days off at a time, but if I take a week off at a time, I feel it. I can tell my sight picture opens up, shots aren't breaking as smooth. And so, typically like what a season would look like for me is, say I start, sometimes we'll have some indoor shoots in maybe November, December. But it really hits hard in January is when the season really ramps up. And then we're shooting basically indoor season through February or so. 3D will kind of start then, and we got some outdoor mixed in, and then we shoot tournaments pretty hard all summer until about August or so. And then for me in Utah, hunting season starts the third week of August, usually the third Saturday in August, and then it's kind of hunting season for a few months. It starts all over again. So I work really hard on target bows all year. And then I'll set up my hunting bow early in the year because I'll usually chase turkeys around and stuff in the spring. So as soon as I get it, I'll set it up and kind of get it initially dialed. And I don't spend like tons and tons of time with it. I just get it close and shoot it some. And then every time I kind of have a spare minute between tournaments, I'll just kind of chip away at my hunting bow a little bit and just kind of get it more refined and more refined. And then say, I don't know, a month or so out from season, that's when I really start hitting it harder and kind of treating it more like getting ready for a tournament type of deal with the hunting bow, and making sure that thing is absolutely dialed. I mean, because I can take a bow and in a day I can have a hunting bow set up good. It's just not like absolutely perfect. And so if I had to, I could set one up real quick, but I make sure I spend the time and get them dialed in.
Yeah, for sure. I bet, man. So like on a day to day, what is your like? Do you worry about like how many arrows you're getting in a day, or is it like you're worrying about the quality of the arrows? How does that process for you being a professional shooter, like with your target bow? I mean,
yeah. So it totally depends on what I'm working on. If I'm shooting, I'm never just shooting to shoot. I'm always working on something. So say maybe it's the start of the season and I'm just kind of trying to get things back rolling and my muscles built back up and stuff. I may be just shooting just more for arrow count just to kind of get things rolling again, and then start worrying more about form and stuff like that, because until I can hold the bow good, nothing else, like everything else, kind of comes secondary. So I got to get built back up. So there are times when I kind of shoot for repetition. Most of the time there's something I'm working on, and if I feel like I'm shooting at the top of my game, everything's going great, I'm super happy with the way I'm shooting, I'm not going to overdo it, because I feel like you can almost over practice sometimes. So I may only shoot for, say, an hour or so a day if I feel like I'm at the very top of my game and I don't need to fix anything, like bow's dialed in, I'm dialed in. But if it's like maybe I say I'm setting up a new bow, or I have a bad habit that I'm trying to get rid of, or something that I'm working on, I may shoot as much as I have time for in a day. If it's a day where I'm not working in the shop or something, I may spend 6, 8 hours on a bow or more. There's been times it's been daylight till dark trying to work on setups, getting ready for tournaments and stuff. I will not go to a tournament unprepared or to a hunt unprepared. That is something I absolutely refuse to do. So I work super hard to do whatever it takes to get a bow ready for tournaments. I mean, there's been times the night before a big shoot, I'll totally rip my bow apart and rebuild the whole thing and stuff and stay up almost all night trying to get ready for that tournament because I hate to lose. I'm not going to go there with a bow that I don't think I can win with. So it's a lot of work sometimes. And other times, you feel like you're dialed and ready way before the tournament, and you just kind of maintain and roll into the tournament with what you got going.
Yeah, for sure. I imagine, like, I've never done it, but I mean, I've been in some pretty intense hunting situations where, you get a screaming elk coming in at you, your heart's pumping a mile a minute, you get a big buck walking underneath your stand. So I could just imagine like the mental aspect of like standing on a line in like Vegas or wherever. And I know Greg Poole's talked about it, like, just like how intense that feeling is. What was it like for you? Like, is that something you had to build up over time, or were you always just like cool, calm, and collective?
It's a little bit of both. I've always been somebody that tends to shoot a little better under pressure. But like if I got something that I'm shooting for, it just gives me a little bit of an edge. And I focus a little better. That doesn't mean I don't get nervous though. Nerves are something you have to learn what your body does under pressure and how to account for that. And you can't let them overcome you. So to me, yeah, I get nervous and I know I'm going to get nervous. So I just plan on that happening and shoot through it regardless and make the same shot as I would. Yeah, my pin might be dancing all over and whatever, but you just make the same shot as you would otherwise. And it tends to work out. And I would say that, like, say the shoot off in Vegas is probably like the highest pressure situation in archery that you could be in that I can think of, really. That to me is the closest thing that I can find to shooting at an animal. Say you got like a giant bull or something like that you're trying to put an arrow in. The main difference for me is on the animal, the thought of like he's gonna get away, it's gotta happen now, keeps going through my brain. And it's trying to suppress that and like, no, take your time, make a good shot. Where at a tournament, it's a controlled environment. Everything's the same. You step up the line, the whistle blows. So it's an environment that I'm used to, and it's more controlled. So I feel like the pressure in that situation is different than hunting. But yeah, you're still, both of them get you rattled and nervous and your blood pressure up and stuff like that. But in a tournament situation, I've learned what my tendencies are under pressure, and I've learned how to set up my bows to kind of account for that and help me in those situations, and also like what I've got to do. So I know, like, say I get nervous, I know that I'm going to start to lose a little bit of feeling in my hands. My sight picture is going to open up. I'm going to tend to be a little bit weak on the back wall. So I know going into those situations, okay, I've got to pull strong into the bow, got to anchor hard into my face, soft grip on the front hand, and that kind of stuff that I just kind of talk myself through as it's going on to kind of help me overcome the nerves. But you see a lot of guys and they go to a tournament and they just fall apart when they get under pressure. And the problem is they set up their bows to shoot good when they're relaxed in practice. And that doesn't work when you're under pressure. Everybody tells themselves, oh, I just need to settle down. I need to calm down. You can't settle down. I mean, if you're shooting for $100,000, you're not going to be calm. I don't care who you are. So you have to learn to deal with the pressure and shoot through it rather than, avoid it.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting, you're comparing that to like, man, I've killed quite a few animals in my life, and the buck fever, it's a real thing. You get a big, especially with the bigger ones, you get them, still. I mean, like I found now that my son, he's old enough to start hunting, it's like even on the small ones, when it's his turn to shoot, I get that, I get that high excited anticipation, probably a lot more than he does. I want him to be successful as his dad, but yeah, still, you definitely get into those situations when you get, a big bull or a big buck in front of you, man. They're definitely high pressure. So it's definitely interesting and cool to hear you talk about like just comparing the two. Cause yeah, I mean, it's a real thing, and a lot of guys have made poor shots or missed shots altogether just because they're in that situation. And, Yeah, I mean, I think you build tolerance to it by putting yourself in those situations, and I think it's just something that comes with bow hunting in general, and just being in those situations time over time over time. Whereas like, yeah, there's a big bull coming in, and like you said, you can't control what that bull's gonna do. Like you can't you that's totally out of control. You can do your best to manipulate if you're elk hunting with calling and strategy and like just what's worked in the past to manipulate where you put yourself and where he goes. But at the end of the day, man, yeah, like you can't control that. So you just have to, again, it comes down to confidence, like confidence in your shooting, and obviously the more reps you put in throughout the year, the more effective killer you're gonna be. So what's your favorite animal to hunt?
Elk by far. Nothing. I mean, I love killing big deer, and I've shot some big deer, but there's just nothing that gets me going as much as big bulls screaming.
Yeah, for sure. So third week, you said the third week you get to hunt elk. Do you get them in velvet then?
Third week of August is when our season, so deer and elk start here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so occasionally you will find velvet bulls. I mean, our hunt, sometimes it lands a little bit later in the month, sometimes it's earlier because it's always that third Saturday, so it depends on how the weeks line up. But like this year, I think it was the 17th or so that it opened, and there was still some velvet bulls running around on open weekend for sure. I would say most bulls, the brunt of bulls are going to shed velvet maybe around here anyways, like August 10th through the 20th, probably somewhere right in that range.
Oh yeah.
So you'll still catch a handful of bulls in velvet if it opens early some years.
Yeah, that's my dream. Like my dream is like I've been chasing muleys for a long time. We have a later season up here in British Columbia than you guys do down there. Like ours starts September 1st, and like a lot of them, depending where you are and depending on the year, it varies obviously it's different every year depending on how hot it is, temperature, and like food and nutrients and all that stuff. But like a nice good buck in velvet, and like obviously our elk season opens September 1st, but I've always dreamed of getting a velvet elk. Like just always, like even like I love seeing them, and like you get to see them when you're doing your scouting in early August, but man, they're just like they look so much more impressive. I mean, they always look impressive, but when they're in their full velvet, man, they sure look awesome.
Oh yeah, they're cool. I have yet to kill a velvet bull. I've always wanted to. A lot of people, at least around here, don't like the look of them because pretty much every elk that most people ever shoot is going to be hardhorn. But the velvet bulls are cool just because there's very few places you even have the opportunity to hunt them while they're still in velvet. So eventually, I'd love to get a good velvet bull.
Yeah, for sure, man. So what kind of strategies do you do when you're elk hunting? Does it depend on so do you go all over? Do you get the opportunity to go around to different states and hunt as well? Or do you just stick mainly to Utah?
No, I try and have at least one out of state tag a year, if not multiple. So I always know I'll have a deer and elk tag at home pretty much. Elk tag, we can buy an archery tag over the counter. Deer, you can do a general tag, which you can draw as long as you put in for the right unit. It's pretty much guaranteed every year. So I know I have those, and then I'll usually try and do somewhere, at least one other state, and go around and chase elk. So it just depends on the way the season lays out for me on whether I'll hunt like elk here early or deer here early. And then, other states usually start around the start of September. So if I got a good out-of-state tag, I'll spend as much time as I have in September hunting that tag, and then I either come back here afterwards or hunt here before, because we have a screwy season in Utah. There's I guess it's a couple units, but one main unit that they call it an extended archery season, and I can hunt that until December 15th for elk with a bow. So basically I get the whole time. So I kind of like almost put that on the back burner sometimes of like, I got these other tags, I'm going to go focus on them, and then I can always come home and hunt later. And it's not a good hunt on that. It's extremely difficult. But if you work hard enough, you can still get on bulls.
Yeah, for sure. So what do you rely a lot on calling, spot and stalk, or still hunting? What's kind of your approach for elk hunting?
Yeah, so it totally depends on the time of year. I mean, if we hunt elk on the opener in August, calling is basically going to do you nothing then because they're still bachelored up. So at that point, we're either like listening for them to rake and trying to move in on them when they're raking, or you just set up in a meadow they tend to cross, or maybe a wallow or something like that. Where once September starts, it kind of depends on the area that I'm in. If it's an area I can glass them up and I feel like I can go like sneak up to them, I always try that first. I feel like if I don't have to blow a call and I can sneak up to him and kill him that way, it's always kind of my first go-to. I mean, to me, calling is more fun and it's more action-packed. But if that elk doesn't know I'm there, I try that first, and then I can always blow the calls later. Once you blow a call, the spot and stock deal is kind of out because they know where you're at as soon as you tell them. So I'll try that. Obviously, if I'm in the thick timber and stuff like that, it's just basically you're only relying on your calls. So start of September, I'll start out maybe doing a little bit of cold calling stuff in the trees if I'm not seeing much, and just set up and wait for them. Or maybe I'll start bugling a little bit. And I feel like, God, my favorite time to call in bulls, I would say, is probably that second week of September or so, maybe, where you can start getting them fired up a little bit. And typically you can find, the good bulls don't have too many cows yet. They're kind of waiting for them younger bulls to round them up before they go steal them. So if I can get one fired up, then I feel like that's my best odds to call one in, is to get him fired up then. Because once they got cows, it gets so much harder. And at that point, I feel like I don't do as well calling them in once they get a big herd rounded up. I feel like I do a little bit better, maybe just keeping them talking and sneaking up to them, or just kind of shadowing the herd and waiting for one of them to slip up, or maybe like midday if he pulls off his cows or something like that. But that's kind of how I go about it.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Like that, middle of September's, those bulls I find too is like that's when they're the most vocal, is when they're, you got the satellite bulls running around, they're ripping around. So you get a lot of vocalization there. And then, the bulls are making their presence well known, but they're still, like you said, if they're going in to steal another bull's cows that he's already rounded up, or he's rounding up cows themselves. But there's definitely the most activity. And I know for myself, like I really like, I'm not a very good caller. My good friends who are good callers, they all make fun of me. And, I've killed a lot of bulls just cow calling, right? Like getting in like that midday hunt is when I think when I'm the best at, playing within my capabilities. And like, they typically do the same thing. They're eating all night, early in the morning, they're going down to get a drink, and then they're going to go into their bed. And then I find that's most productive for me is, from the middle of September to the end of September, just cow call and walking softly and getting into their bedding area, and then maybe letting out a good challenge bugle or a bugle to really get that herd bull fired up. And up here we have a 6-point rule. So, it's really hard. One of the hardest parts is actually locating a 6-point, right? We don't have, you think of a place as big as British Columbia, you think there would be a lot more elk, but I mean, like, we probably are 4 times the size of Montana with, a quarter of the elk that they have. So it does make it tough, but, lately I've found too, is like, these zones of pressure that, lately it's just been like, we're getting a lot more elk hunters. Like, I don't know if it's just, they're seeing a lot more guys holding 6 points on Instagram and they want to get into the action too. But I mean, I've found a lot of success in using those zones of pressure to my advantage as well. Like a lot of guys go in there and they're making bad calls, and, they're putting pressure on elk and kind of, corralling him into these areas that I've been able to use to my advantage. So, but yeah, it comes down like what we were talking about before, is like, it just comes down to putting in the reps, right? It's the same as shooting, same thing. You have to actually get out, do all that stuff, have encounters with elk. And unfortunately, you got to fail a lot. You got to screw up a lot of stocks, and you got to make a lot of bad decisions before you start making the right ones when you're elk hunting. That's for sure.
Oh yeah.
So, what about deer hunting? What kind of, like, muleys, whitetail?
We don't have whitetail here. Trying to think. I've killed one whitetail in South Texas. I don't know if I really count that as that much of a whitetail hunt. On corn feeders down there. I mean, yeah, it's cool and all, but the feeder goes off, the deer kind of come in and you shoot one. So it's, I would love to go do like a true, like a Midwest, whitetail hunt type of deal would be fun. But around here, all we have is muleys. So yeah, I hunt a lot of high country muleys, or I've killed some in the rut later in the year where we have that extended season. We can get on them in the rut sometimes, but I've killed a lot of them early as well. So it's a good time. I've had some pretty good luck chasing some good deer around the home.
Yeah, for sure. What I found too, like I went through this period where, like, reading Robbie Denning's book and just like going all in on mule deer and like sacrificing all the other tags I had throughout the year and just to find big mule deer. But I found, when you're chasing those big mule deer, man, you pretty much got to be all in on that. And lately I've just, the last few years, I've just had this giant infatuation with elk. So I just been really addicted to chasing the bugles and stuff. So it's just been so much fun. Still learning a lot, you know what I mean? Like I've been fortunate. I've hunted a lot of days. I have a lot of failures, and it does get easier every year for sure. I mean, you kind of learn what works and learn how the animals interact with each other. But yeah, with that 6 point rule, we have a lot of it makes it tough. Like last year I had a really good massive 5x5. I mean, like he was so big at the bases, his antlers were almost touching. I had him at 20 yards for man over 5 minutes, just sitting there looking at him, right? I'm tucked into a pine tree.
Oh.
He had no idea I was there, and I just literally had to sit there and watch him. And he just started feeding, and then he kind of just circled up behind me, and I watched him the whole time until I seen his tail go up the tree, and I was like, oh man.
Oh, no, that's a bummer.
Yeah, for sure, man. But it's part of the game, and yeah, I definitely love chasing. I love chasing those elk for sure. So you got any other hunts planned this year? You already got your muley and your elk?
Yeah, so I filled 2 tags. I still have an elk tag here at home.
Okay.
So I'll hunt that some. I'm not too super worried about it right now. I've got plenty of meat, so if I come across a decent bull, I'll probably try and shoot one. But my brother still has a deer tag. My dad's got an elk tag left. And then some different friends and family and stuff. So I'll probably just go help them and stuff for a while and maybe do a little bit of hunting here and there on my own. But I just kind of love being out and being a part of it. So even if I can get in on their hunts, that's, almost as good as shoot my own to me.
Yeah, for sure. That's what I was going to ask you when you brought it up there. If you spend a lot of time hunting with your dad and your brother still, and you guys have family events for hunts. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those are special for sure. A lot of my best memories are, hunting with dad and brothers. I mean, there definitely is times where your frustration hits in hunting with your family, but at the same time, man, you kind of forget those. Looking back, you forget all those bad times and you just remember the good times. That's for sure.
Yeah, it works out pretty slick. My brother, there's almost nothing I wouldn't do to kill a big animal. Like if I see one, he could be in the nastiest, worst spot you could ever imagine, and I'm going. And my brother's the same way, so it works out pretty slick being able to kind of hunt together. We kind of think the same too, so it works out pretty well that way to be able to have a good hunting partner is not going to give up your spots, and he'll go wherever you want to go, and I'll do the same for him. So
yeah, for sure. That's half the battle. And when you don't have to explain your reasons of why you want to go into that hellhole, you just go. It definitely makes things a lot easier than sit there for 20 minutes and give excuses of why you think we need to go in there. That's for sure. How about him? Does he bow hunt as well? Is he big into archery?
Oh yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, he doesn't do as much of the tournament stuff as I do. Growing up, we did a bunch of it. And then he just kind of backed off a little bit on the tournament. He'll shoot a little bit of stuff, maybe some leagues or some local shoot stuff, and he can really shoot a bow well. But he loves to bow hunt and stuff too. So he'll always picks the archery tags. If it's one that you could go back with a rifle later, obviously he'll do that if he doesn't fill his archery tag, but he would much rather shoot one with a bow than a gun. Same as me.
Yeah, no doubt. So didn't I see you were in New Zealand? Is that right? This year?
Yeah, I went to New Zealand this spring. I got a buddy that lives over there. So I went on a trip over with my wife, and we went and did a bunch of fishing and kind of toured around a little bit. And then we got to hunt a little bit at the end of the trip too. So that was amazing. That's kind of been a lifelong dream to go over to New Zealand and hunt red stags over there. So it was cool. I ended up with a little stag. Nothing special. We were just hunting them on, some free range stuff. One of my friends over there had a place that we could go hunt on and stuff. So it's just, no fences or nothing, and they're kind of smaller stags, but it was just an awesome experience. We went over there when they were rutting and just the roars, and it was cool. It was pretty neat.
Yeah, I'd love to do that for sure. What kind of fishing were you guys doing?
Much of fly fishing. So I'm not great at it, but my wife and I love to go. So we went over there, and they've got a bunch of big browns and rainbows over there. So it's pretty cool to go chase them. Yeah,
for sure. So how do you keep, that's probably, I imagine you still had tournaments on the go while you're over there. So you probably don't want to go too far without your target bow. So I imagine you probably had to bring your target bow with you and practice as you're hunting. I mean, that must be quite the juggling.
Yeah, it kind of sucks. So I had a tournament, trying to think of how the days worked out, but I got home from tournament on like Monday, and I think we left for New Zealand on like that Wednesday or Friday or something. And then I came back and I think I had 1 day at home and then went to another tournament after I got home. So I took my target bow with me and practiced while I was over there some, and my hunting bow as well. So I'd be ready when I came back, because I can't take 2 weeks off and then go straight to a tournament after that and try and win. So
yeah, no doubt. That's good juggling, no doubt. That's for sure. Well, dude, I want to thank you for coming on the show. It's been a lot of fun to talk to you. Again, sorry for giving you hassle there. I know you're busy, but I really want to try to get this one on the books.
Yeah, no problem at all. I'm happy to come on whenever you want me.
Okay, right on, buddy. So just real quickly, just let my listeners know where they can follow you and just keep tabs on your competitions and your achievements. And also, you have a archery shop, don't you? I mean, most of my listeners are obviously up in Canada, but you never know when they get down your way, they can come check it out.
Yeah, so I'm working on getting better at the social media side of stuff. I kind of suck at that. I'm way better at shooting than posting, but I think it's Kyle.Douglas1 on Instagram, and then I have a Facebook page. It's just Kyle Douglas Professional Archer. So I'll put all my stuff up on there. They can follow along the tournament stuff. And then there's also like Competition Archery Media will follow a lot of the tournaments if they want to watch along with that. And then Douglas Archer is my bow shop. It's in Ogden, Utah. So if anybody's ever around that area and needs anything, they can stop by and hit us up there.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, man. It's pretty awesome when you get to, shoot like you do all over the, all these competitions, but then you still get to come home and, you're working on bows and you're just around it so much, right? And you get to do it for a living, and it's really great and really inspiring. That's why I tell my kid, I'm like, hey man, keep working at this, because you never know, right? I'm going to tell you one thing: if you don't give it your all, I'm going to tell you 100% you're not going to make it. But if you give it your all, you never know, right? You just never know. And trust me, doing this and doing something that you love to do for a living is a lot better than doing something that you just do because you have to. And then you also, then you got to find time to do the things that you're really passionate about and you really love to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm all for it, man. You just got to work hard. Determination will do a lot of wonders for you.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay, buddy. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.